Hi, today we're going to read one of my favorite stories called The Fabled Fourth Graders of Aesop Elementary School by Candace Fleming. The Principal Struggles. The soon-to-be fourth graders at Aesop Elementary School had a reputation for being precocious, said their former first grade teacher, Miss Bucky, and she ground her teeth. High energy, added their second grade teacher, Miss Chin. The muscle beneath her jaw twitched. Robust, agreed their third grade teacher, Mr. Frost, and he patted his now almost white hair. Humph, snorted Bertha Buns, the lunchroom monitor. Those kids are just plain naughty. Because she wasn't a teacher, Mrs. Buns felt free to speak the truth. Mrs. Buns was right. So special were the incoming fourth graders that no teacher dared set foot in what would soon be their classroom. Not for the love or money, shivered Miss Bucky. Not for all the tea in China, shuddered Mrs. Chen. Ye gods, no, yelped Mr. Frost. It was the last day of summer vacation, and Mrs. Struggles, Aesop Elementary's principal, was at her wits' end. School starts tomorrow, and I still don't have a fourth grade teacher, she moaned. What am I going to do? Have you placed a want ad? Suggested Mrs. Bucky. Spoken with the superintendent? Suggested Mrs. Chen. Talked with the school board? Suggested Mr. Frost. Humph! Mrs. Bunn snorted again. Call a zookeeper. Mrs. Struggles ignored the remark. Defeated, she shuffled into her office and flopped into her chair. If Aesop Elementary were bigger, she thought, I would have separated the troublemakers long ago. But the school was small, only one classroom per grade level, so the kids had to stay together. Rubbing her throbbing temples, she sighed. Oh, I wish a teacher would walk through the door. At that precise moment, a breeze blew through the principal's office. It rustled the papers on her desk, rattled her window blinds, and flung open the door to reveal a tall, dark man wearing a pipe helmet and clutching a copy of the morning want ads. I am Mr. Jupiter, he said. I have come about the teaching job. Mrs. Struggles rubbed her eyes. Was this a dream, she wondered? But no, Mr. Jupiter was still there. You are looking for a fourth grade teacher, aren't you? He asked. Mrs. Struggles nodded, her spirits suddenly soaring. Waving Mr. Jupiter into a seat, she asked, Tell me a bit about yourself. Where to begin? He replied. My first job was an assistant dog groomer aboard King Bernard's yacht, the SS Pooch, anchored off the Dalmatian coast. After receiving my degree in nanothermal economics from Dummer University, I led an expedition in search of the dodo bird. Later, I conducted the Timbuktu Philharmonic Orchestra, worked as a translator for Bigfoot, became the first man to ski down Mount Everest, collected mummified cats in Egypt, and discovered the lost city of Atlantis. He smiled, among other things. Mrs. Struggle tapped her desk with a pencil. He certainly sounded interesting. Do you have any teaching experience? She asked. Some, replied Mr. Jupiter. I was head tetherball coach at Matilda Jane's School for Prim and Proper Girls in Las Vegas, as well as the swimming instructor at Loch Ness Middle School. I also taught Swahili as a second language at Dougalhorn Elementary in Switzerland, hula dancing at Balderdash Academy for Boys in London, and organic geochemistry at Harvard. He smiled again, among other things. Mrs. Struggle tapped her desk some more. He sounded experienced, but have you worked with high energy students? I studied for a year at the Coochie Coochie Institute for Misbehaved Monkeys, said Mr. Jupiter. He smiled a third time, among other things. Mrs. Struggles kept tapping. Is there anything else you'd like to add? She finally asked. Mr. Jupiter shook his head. Nothing important, he said, although you might be interested to know I attended 5th grade at this very school. Mrs. Struggles stopped tapping. You did? She exclaimed. Really? Who was your teacher? Her question caused Mr. Jupiter to turn as white as his whale-tooth necklace. But Mrs. Struggles didn't notice. Leaping to her feet, she cried, Why didn't you tell me this earlier? She extended her hand. You're hired. Welcome back to Aesop Elementary, Mr. Jupiter.